Leaving our children was a major hurdle for me, and I wasn't going to get over that one easily. I was the kind of mother who would rush into the bedroom every 20 minutes when they were asleep to check they were still breathing. I didn't have a full night's sleep until both of them were over a year old. Not because they wouldn't sleep, but because I kept going in and checking to see they were all right. A couple of events in their young lives made me even more protective. John understood and found a way around. There was few people I trusted. There was my mum, but she lived hundreds and hundreds of miles away. There was John's mum, and there was my niece Mandy. Well, John's mum lived the nearest, in fact 60 miles away, so when we were building the business, we made the 120-mile round trip to leave the children with her. Then my niece Mandy came down to stay with us to help me through what was a phobia, I suppose. And I went out to build the business with John. Alex then found that if he held onto my leg, screaming, he would get attention. It was more like emotional blackmail. John drove down the road a couple of miles and said, "Look, we better go back and see what he's doing. If he's still crying, then you must stay." I rushed to the window, and there he was, giggling on the floor with Mandy, playing with him. It was just after this time that we moved to Scotland. Our main priorities had changed. We now were redecorating and reshaping our house. There was diggers everywhere, working on the ground. Then Pat and Greta said we needed to go to Dream Weekend. John said it was a major function, and it was Bill and Les O'Brien. You see, I didn't know what functions were because I'd never been to one when I was in last time. I was not to be moved on this one, especially when I found out it was Torquay. It was in January. We were already in the first week of January, and it was snowing heavily. There was no way I was travelling almost 2,000 miles round trip in the snow. There was no way I was leaving my kids, not for 3 days. You have got to be joking. And who are these Bill and Les O'Brien anyway? There was no way I was going. On the way there, we had to go to Cheltenham because I had to drop the kids off with John's mum and dad. They were less than impressed we were going to Torquay. And had we seen the forecasts? There's blizzard conditions. Well, when you're brought up in Scotland, you know what blizzard conditions really are, don't you? I was convinced we had paid the highest price to go to the function. I kept saying, "Bet we've come the farthest. No one has travelled as far as us," I kept saying. Well, by the time we got there and we queued for ages to get in on the Friday night, the music had started and I was well into the function when Pat and Greta and Jerry and Mandy came on stage. Jerry then said, "Who's here from Scotland?" And I went, "Yes!" I was the only one. It was so embarrassing. John was practically under his seat. And top of all that, we were sitting right on the front row. But I said to John, "See, I told you, we've come the farthest." And then Jerry said, "Anyone here from Holland?" And there was a scream, "Germany, France." And I thought, oh, why isn't there people here from Scotland? The weekend was absolutely magical. I really don't know what happened to Joy and Nancy that day or that weekend, but it certainly changed our lives. We had made a decision to build this business, and by March we were 21%. One of the major factors was that we wanted to be part of the Directs team. John said we would never, ever queue again, and we didn't. Dream Weekend made us understand what we had our hands on. It gave us belief. It made us set our goals and date them. We had goals for absolutely everything. We had dates set for every single level. We now have goals written on pieces of wallpaper, stuck on the mirror above the bed, the ceiling above the bed. Alex is learning to read. And every morning, as he crawls into our bed at some unearthly hour, we hear in our semi-conscious state our self-talk piece being read out aloud several times, and often with Holly echoing in the background. Out of the mouths of babes, they say. We have picked up customers in the funniest of ways. For instance, when Holly started play school, she absolutely hated washing paintbrushes. At home, all she did was squirt on some LOC. And she said to her teacher, "What you need is some LOC." And when the teacher asked what LOC was, "I'll get mummy to tell you." Another customer. When Alex started primary school, they were asked on their first few weeks there, "What did Daddy do?" Some of the children said farming, some of them it was oil, some were fishing, and Alex said he draws circles. His teacher realised and asked me if we were in Amway. I then found out that she used to get Amway products years ago, and her supply had moved away. She is now actually my very best customer. Our children are really positive children. They're not allowed to say can't, only I haven't done it yet. The teaching in this business has helped us understand that what you say is what you get. And books like What You Say When You Talk to Yourself really helped us. No longer do we say our children are terrors, our children are imps, but only that we have good children. And believe me, apart from the very occasional hiccup, that's exactly what we've got. Alex and Holly have also learned how to answer the phone properly. But even this can be a bit dodgy. A couple of weeks back, Alex answered the phone and said, "Phone back in 10 hours. Dad and Mum are in the bath." Why he said 10 hours, I don't know. In fact, we were putting a new light fitting up in the bathroom. So we were standing in the bath, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. A book called Hide or Seek is an absolute vital book for parents. Greta taught me about the diamond tree, and the children have a tree drawn on a piece of paper, and every time Daddy and Mummy go out, they colour in a little diamond at the end of the branches. My children never say, "Oh, why are you going out again?" They ask where we're going. And if it's getting near to the tree being full, it's "When are you going?" And the funniest of things happen. We've had electricians and all sorts of people working in our house recently. And the electrician the other day put all the power off, and it was starting to get dark. Holly stood in the middle of the living room and said, "Okay, what's the challenge?" And then she covered her mouth and she said to her cousin, "We're not allowed to say anything else." Greta said I had to learn to smile when I answered the phone. No matter what was happening in the house, I had to smile, because then I would answer the phone in a happy tone of voice. And when people say "fit like," as they sometimes do, you mustn't say "nae bad." We always say "great." Having a list by our phone is absolutely crucial. What I found was easiest is to change it after each monthly function, because then you don't run out of things that you should be saying. And it is a major factor in building our business. This business can give you so much. Last month, my dad was very ill. In fact, we were really worried about him. He has a lung condition and was having a challenge breathing. The hospital loaned him a machine which enabled him to have drugs directly into his lungs. But it had to go back because the hospital only has one to cope with everybody. I was really upset and frightened that Dad would have another attack. So John said, "We'll just get him one." And within a week, John had liaised with Dad's doctor and bought Dad his own one. I wonder, had we still been working and we were trying to match month and money, would we have been able to do that? We are so lucky, so very lucky to have Pat and Greta to guide us and help us, and have Jerry and Mandy and the other diamonds and emeralds to look to. Since being in this business, John and I have been to Sicily, Cyprus, Madeira. We've been out with Amway at Milton Keynes to the famous Cashlashby. We've been invited to golf tournaments and Super Bowl and various other fun things. We've spent fantastic weekends with Directs, on Directs weekends with all the emeralds and the diamonds. And we look forward to this year's cruise on the Cunard Princess and spending many, many hours on the beaches of the world with our friends. We've reached the pearl level, but we haven't by no means arrived. We are on an exciting journey, a very, very exciting journey. And before I hand you back to John, I've likened life and this business to this. You promised me roses round the door. You promised me romance and lots more. You promised me a great big house. You always told me you were a man, not a mouse. The patter of tiny feet came all too soon, and many a night I paced looking at the moon. Time passed very quickly and our lives carried on. Our dreams became history. Oh, where had they gone? This man woke us up suddenly one day. He spoke of our dreams and didn't mention any pay. We thought, what if we could? Oh, only if we could try. He said, yes, you can, and I'll even help you get by. Our lives are exciting. Our dreams will come true. And friends we have many just out of the blue. And as I look at our big house, I now know I married a man, not a mouse. This business is an opportunity. It can set you free. It gives a chance to everyone, and that includes you and me. It gives freedom of choice and choice of freedom. It gives you friends you know who care. It can give you just what you want. But the catch is, you must define your dream. So if, like me, you're married to a dreamer, life will certainly be fun. And if you'd now like to stand and welcome my dreamer, my best friend, John.
Well, wasn't she great? But 3 years ago, it wouldn't have been that way at all, because going back 3 years, Nancy wouldn't have been able to stand on this stage and speak for just 5 minutes, never mind as long as she has. And really that's a tribute to the self-development program that we have as part of this business, which helps us to achieve all kinds of different things over our lives. Well, I decided a long time ago that when I got to speak, I was going to skip over the early years as quick as I could and spend as much time as possible telling you how not to slow down your business as we did. And we believe, as I said earlier, we could have been here maybe a little bit sooner if we had put into practice all we were told and not just the bits and pieces that we like to hear, everything. What I'm going to do is try to, anyways, to share with you the lessons and experience we've had so that hopefully you can sift through what we've said, and perhaps from that you can pick out one or two things that might just help you to move your business on just a little bit faster by avoiding those mistakes that we made. Now, I grew up for the first 10 years of my life on the Wirral. That's a peninsula between Wales and Liverpool, or between Liverpool and Wales, whichever is the appropriate, but that's where it is. And my child was very, very happy. My father was in education, my mum didn't work, and I had a sister who was 7 years older than me, and she still is. And I did all the usual things that horrid small boys do, like put big spiders down the bed of your favourite sister, great big hairy ones, and I'd appear like magic at the window on a Sunday afternoon, just exactly as boyfriend had plucked up the courage after 2 hours to steal his first kiss, and I was always there to witness it. Now then, we spent 8 years in a small village in Worcestershire, and my parents wanted a professional career for me, and they believed a good education and university would secure a good financial future. Well, in this day and age, we know how that one goes, don't we? And they wanted me to be in veterinary medicine. I went to King's Gloucester's, a public school founded by Henry VIII, and armed with all of the necessary information, the documents of success, I took myself off and joined F.W. Woolworth and Company. To say my parents were not amused is putting it mildly. They were absolutely livid. They were on holiday, so they couldn't stop me. And I spent 6 very exciting months in the stockroom amid boxes and stockroom ladies and their experience and delivery trucks as a trainee manager. And I soon became pretty frustrated with that and the dead man's shoes situation that seemed to persist in the company. And I was in a big hurry to get to the top. And soon after my 6 months with the company, I joined one of the leading supermarket companies where I thought I was going to really get ahead. And I was a trainee. I was 19 years of age, full of, to the brim with ambition, enthusiasm, no fear at all of hard work. Wherever it took, I would do. And by the time I was 20, I had my first store up in Nuneaton. And the growth in the company was absolutely incredible. I was an area manager at 22, at 27, a regional controller. Imagine, 27 years of age, 30 supermarkets, big uns, 4 area managers. I mean, you can imagine how big my head was and power over those people. And I just was a bit of a terrorist, and violence and corporate intimidation were just the little skills I picked up along the way. And after all, it was a bit of a brutal world, because in those days, the phase of life of a manager was just about 20 weeks. You had a stock take every 10 weeks, and if you had 2 bad ones on the trot, you got fired, period. It wasn't negotiable, and that's the way it was. Now, in those days, I literally could do no wrong. Everything I touched turned to gold, the business was going well, and everything was super. All of a sudden, this thing called a recession happened. Now, I'd never known a recession. I'd only known up, 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 and this was down, down, down. It was alien and strange to me. And after 4 months of the chill wind of trading, they, in head office, decided that what they need to do was to restructure. That's a nice term, isn't it? Restructure. And what had happened was this. We had, at our level, put our faith in the company for a career and a future and success. And we had found that they, because they no longer needed us, were going to turn off the electric light in our brains, and that was it. Now, that was fine. They were still going to keep us on, and we could stay, and we would be demoted if we wanted to. Now, I wasn't really going to accept that. And really, if you look around you today, it's very much the same, isn't it? In this little bit of a recession we've got today, it's recessions, it's layoffs, it's redundancies, all linked to volume, or lack of it. Some of it linked to the oil price. I mean, just imagine your family's financial future and well-being being linked to an index. Well, we can't control it, and sometimes maybe if the oil is $17 a barrel, we got a job. Hallelujah. But if it ain't and it goes down to 13, then we don't have a job. Now, don't misunderstand me. There is nothing at all wrong with that. That's the way of the world. We just need to appreciate and understand that if we're comfortable letting indices control our future, great. But let's not complain if we then become casualties. And I was a casualty then. They decided. Well, I wasn't really about to be told how to live, and so I decided what I was going to do was to get a hold of the Times and the Telegraph and find another direction, which I did. And I found other ways of getting my goals. So what I did then was to get into a growth industry. It was the motorway service area industry, and I found myself very soon the general manager of a brand new service area down in Devon on the M5. And it was an interesting company. The MD was an absolute tyrant, an absolute tyrant. He was totally and utterly irrational. Now, he built a structure that guaranteed constant warfare. between operations and marketing. Now that way, what he could do was to give chocolate drops to the left hand that then went and hit the right, and the other way around. What he did effectively was play both ends against the middle. And in that way, I guess what he thought he would do was to keep either side so weak they could never actually attack him and make him feel secure. Now, there were wonderful things in the company like whisper campaigns. Did you know so-and-so and so-and-so? And dirty tricks campaigns. And even you could get elevated to the dartboard. Now, I was a fighter and a forthright kind of person. I still am. I like to say what I think. And that's a definite qualification for elevation to the dartboard. That's where I found myself pretty quick. But in those days, I did find an ally and a savior in those dark beset days in the form of Pat Gregory. Now, Pat was an area manager in the company, as my area manager, and became a very good friend to me and a mentor. And after working very closely with Pat for 11 months, we got me off the dartboard. Now, that was good because it got the pressure and stress off. Now, Pat had a challenge with one of his stores, one of his sites rather, in West London. Now, the general manager of that site was, well, he was well over 50. He was under stress and strain. He was on Valium. And the whole ship was going down pretty quick. Now, I didn't want the site at all, but I did want the chance and opportunity to get into something which was really going the wrong way and affect a very dramatic turnaround. And that way I could shine. And with Pat's help, that's exactly what we did. Now, I didn't have at that time any head office experience. And when the chance came to run the company's retail operation, I grabbed it. And then very quickly I found that I was getting bored with a desk job. I was stuck on a desk and I wasn't out there in the field. There was no zip, no zest, no action. And I wanted to get out and get into that side of things again. And more, I'd already controlled 2 sites, but I wanted now to be an area manager, to have more responsibility. And, well, I said to the MD what I wanted. He said, well, yes, okay, just as soon as this and just as soon as that, then we'll see. The only trouble was that this and that never really seemed to get done. And I just began to realize that I was just being strung along, basically, and just being used by being vague promises that weren't really going to amount to anything. So out with the Times and the Telegraph again. And I saw an advert that offered me exactly just what I wanted. It was a senior exec position reporting direct to the MD and running all the service areas of a major competitor. Now that really tickled my fancy, to get in with the opposition. They wouldn't promote me, I'll promote myself. Right, I'll show you. So I got the job. And I quickly began to shake up and carve up all the old guard in the company and get some changes in outmoded systems and begin to get in some pretty strong financial controls, which in that company were very sadly lacking. And getting that job set in place for me a whole series of events which were then going to totally and utterly change my life. Now, I don't know about you, but if you look back in time, you may find in your life you have a certain pivotal point. And at that point, nothing was the same ever again after that time. And that was there for me. But you see, during that period of intense frustration before I got the job, I'd be banging my head against a jelly brick wall. The chief accountant in the company had approached me about this business. And in those days, there was no such thing as an ad pack. And this is about 10 years ago. And I was a ripe prospect and ambitious and frustrated, but just absolutely no opportunity. Now, how many people do you think right now in Scotland, right across the UK, sitting there at Christmas time thinking to themselves, another year gone by? Where's the progress? Frustrated with things totally beyond their control, holding them back, frustrated with feelings maybe of being undervalued by the company, of being used, literally just like I was, tearing out my hair to get an opportunity to do something. And they would be looking, I can assure you, to change 1994 for them. They're just wanting the chance that we have. Well, it looked good to me. And if a chief accountant was in it, then it had to be good. So there I was in. Now, you ask yourself, who would be the the very first person that I would show this business to? Wow. The very first person I showed this business to was my very good friend, my ally, my mentor, Pat Gregory.